Hi, Prasad. I want to start this conversation by asking you about what you think about the city of Mumbai or Bombay, whatever we like to call it.
Well, it's Mumbai now, but you cannot forget. I mean, it's difficult to forget things, right? I mean, so Mumbai and Bombay kind of keeps coming simultaneously, uh, and that is the nature of the city also, no? Because it keeps adding layers and layers and layers and layers, and it's an interesting question to kind of it's a broad question, but also a kind of a uh, it's also a kind of a provoking question because the way cities get defined by governments and states is through their population and their density uh, and their the kind of work that goes on and stuff like that. uh, I think uh, for me, the city is an intensity of things, of claims, of activities, of diversities, and I think that's what uh, is a city. And also, the governments also have a tendency to kind of define a city because modern uh, planning requires a city boundary as such. It requires, without a boundary it cannot, it doesn't know what it is planning or designing. I think cities are much beyond the idea of geographic boundaries. They are endless. They phase out. They kind of they are uh, open, uh, and cities are also not uh, you know like there is also a tendency to kind of identify, uh, to map the city, to kind of to make a map of its problems, to identify what is lacking, and to kind of set up solutions and stuff like that. So I would say that city is not a math problem. It is not. It's not really a mathematical problem which can be solved with an equation and a formula or something like that. It's not. It's not that. It's the year 2 plus 2 is not 4. It's 22 probably. Or I don't know, maybe 5, 6, whatever. And I'll explain what do I mean by this, because cities kind of have cities have this. They're not a sum of its inhabitants' lives. The city is not a sum of its inhabitants' lives. It is much more than that. It is much more than the. It has identity. It has a autonomy. It has a kind of force, and this is something which we've been thinking about for quite some time. And we call it the idea of trips and kicks that all of us have. That all of us, you have a kick, therefore you are doing this. I have a kick, therefore I kind of tell stories, and there are people who have a kick who do a lot of things. And I think city can at one level can be kind of thought of as a sum of the energetic cells, the energies of all of us, which kind of come together to make it. It's not infrastructure. Cities are not infrastructure. City is not land. City is not density. City is not its people. It's all of them, of course, but it is. I think it is a sum of energies. It is a sum of energies. It is like, for example, when strangers come together, amazing things happen, new things get produced. They find a moment to kind of reflect on each other and figure out terms to kind of be with each other. Your contradictions don't get sorted, but people kind of come to terms with it and decide to live with contradictions. So cities kind of are able to hold all of it together, all of this complexity and diversity and madness, I would say, together to kind of to kind of produce itself. And one more mistake we keep doing is that plans make cities. Plans do not make cities. Plans emerge from the politics of the city. Plan is produced by the city. Plan is kind of produced through the desires and the instincts of the city. And plan itself adds a layer to the city. It nudges probably a little bit here and there, but it becomes a part of the city. It kind of fades away over time. It kind of becomes so. So I think city is this incoherent, unending, uncharacterized kind of entity of densities of desires and madnesses and you know uh, claims and possibilities and opportunities. People come here, and then they get kind of get absorbed into it, and they become a part of the city, and then the city kind of becomes them. I inhabit the city as much as the city inhabits in me. So it's a space, of course, but space in its widest idea. Space in its widest idea to kind of and one feels the city, like you feel
So what do we mean when we're talking about Bombay? When we're talking Mumbai, right now it's Mumbai. Even though for me it'll always be Bombay. What do we mean when we say that we relate to the city, or the city has become a part of me? It's a very, every city that you come from, or every city wherever a person comes from, there's always this thing about the city. But when it comes to Mumbai, Mumbai kind of just has this thing in it that people from outside have come and they've kind of just been a part of it. They've just
nice. What's his name?
her name
What's her-
Riley.
Riley, yeah.
Yes. The city kind of, we say that Mumbai has become a part of me. Like Marine Drive, there are millions of people that go to Marine Drive. Even in the times of COVID, that was the people's place. People would choose to go out, even though, it's a high risk factor. Yet people want to go there and sit there. And not just Marine Drive, there's all the sea faces and all the waterfronts that we have. So my question is, what does it mean when we relate to Mumbai, when an inhabitant of Mumbai, relates to this city and calls it his or her own, and starts thinking of it in that way? What is it about this city? What do you think it is about the city that makes us feel that way about Mumbai?
I think like all nice cities, and cities are nice places. Uh, I think the inhabitation of Mumbai is uh, the space of the city. For example, the COVID times kind of got us very sharply into it. The idea of the home. So where is the home really? Because you're asked to kind of sit inside your house, and 50% of these people live in a house which is around 100 to 150 square feet, and inside it there are 5 or 6 people. So there is no possible, and the house is not the home. The home is much bigger than the house itself. It includes the street, it includes the trains, it includes the open spaces, it includes the sea, it includes the whole series of things. We live our lives. So when the outside was kind of shrunk because of COVID, we realized that we are trapped, we are imprisoned actually, and it is not an imprisonment; it's a loss of home really. And I think historically cities have kind of have been made through this kind of transgression of the inside and the outside, of the home and the house, of the private and the public. And I think all of us are able to kind of live our lives independently, autonomously, but at the same time kind of connect to others. And that is an important aspect with respect to cities, actually, with respect to cities. Bombay is very special. Like I think Bombay is special for many reasons for me. One is because I grew up here, and I know the city well, so I'm familiar, and I kind of and that familiarity brings with it a comfort to navigate it and to live it. But I think more than that, I think when somebody says that one inhabits the city and the city inhabits her, then I would mobilize the idea of settling. Cities settle slowly. They settle slowly. They It's not settlement. It's not where I have. It's like it's like, imagine your first day in school, right? In college, you meet a group of people who are strangers. You don't know. You are kind of anxious. You are kind of suspicious. You are nervous. You kind of trying to figure out who speaks more, who can be friendly, who's kind of, you kind of profile them in your head, and then you kind of, figure out your distances, nearnesses, and all of those things. And within a week or two, you kind of, figure out who can be good friend. You make friends, who needs to be kind of, kept away from, and stuff like that. And then there are people whom you may hate, and who speak angrily, who kind of, become uh, uh, you know uh, 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 strange at times, but you do not go and break their heads or kill them. You figure out a way. You come to terms with them. You figure out a way to live with them, right? This happens in cities, and this process of kind of, slowly figuring out ways of living with each other, and kind of, getting familiar, and kind of, lending yourself into the city and becoming a part of that process, I call it as settling. And I think we all settle slowly into cities, and the city settles into us, and that familiarity, that kind of understanding of the city, and for each it is different. It's kind of, it's a different kind of a notion. So that settling is where the city is kind of, one starts inhabiting the city, and the city inhabits her. uh, Bo- Bombay is interesting for a variety of reasons. It's for a serious number of reasons, because Bombay has a very thick history. It has a very, very thick history, around 2,000 years of history. And so you kind of breathe the layers of those years, when you pass through them, and you kind of, feel them, and you inhabit them. And that history kind of, brings has sedimented. Bombay has not gone through a big war or a big crisis where things have been removed and pulled down and cleared. Things are kind of layered over one another, and that has kind of, created series of interesting ideas and concepts, and all kinds of ways in which things come together. Bombay has a very interesting urban form. Bombay's form is very fuzzy. You go. I mean, very few places is planned and which has a boundary wall. Otherwise, most city does not have a boundary wall. It sits on the street, and when it sits on the street, there are layers and layers that get added. There's a shop. There's a shop in front of the shop, and there is a shop in front of that shop. There's a vendor sitting, and then there is another shop inside another shop, and so many things, and the entire and the movement happens through all of these many layers, but these layers are interesting because they corrode the boundaries. They make the boundaries blurry, and those fuzzy, blurry boundaries are able to provide for much more transactions. It increases the transaction capacity of the city, and therefore it kind of, uh, 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 provides for more diversity and intensity of people. So Bombay has a very interesting urban form. Bombay has, the sea on one side and the mountain on the other side. Bombay has the highest diversity of flora and fauna amongst the cities of its kind. Bombay has highest densities of people as comparable to any largest city of the world. Bombay provides food for the poorest and the richest at the same time. So I think one can keep talking about what Bombay can do, and Bombay gets back. Bombay gets back. A year before New York had its floods, Bombay had its floods. But Bombay got back in 3 days. And New York took more than 2 months to kind of get back. Bombay gets back, and Bombay gets back
So when we
all its madnesses. Yeah.
So when we talk about the city and we talk about the urban form, right? So what all goes into designing an urban form when you as an urbanist, there are urban designers and there are architects, and we have entire teams of people, that I worked with you on the UDRI project where we documented the city for making the DP of the city. So what all goes into the entire process when we say that, Bombay expanded? Like when we look at the history of Bombay, Bombay was a very small, teeny tiny chunk of just 7 islands that were enclosed, and the British formed the city, and then there were the outskirts where the people who used to come live in the to work in the mills, they were put up, and then slowly the Bombay expanded towards the north, and then we had the suburbs, and then it expanded towards the central region, and then we had Navi Mumbai come up in the side. It's expanding over the years. So what all goes into the thoughts when a city is made, when there are the makings, when the process? How does that happen?
So first of all, cities are not made; they happen. They happen, and I think modern planning has not really come to terms with the idea of this happening of a city. It takes a lot to make a city happen. When New Bombay was planned, it was planned, but it took 30 years for it to become a city. Chandigarh, it took probably 40, 50 years to become a city. It was a large architectural project. So cities are not made; they happen. The planning process in India is kind of is depend. It kind of it tries to kind of planning across the world try to do two, three things. One is they kind of zone things or separate activities from each other. They kind of regulate, make it compatible for infrastructure to be laid. So they kind of have a grid or have a series of roads and stuff like that. And they kind of propose that there should be social infrastructure, amenities and utilities put in place so that people can kind of live their lives properly. But in all of this, I think cities like Bombay's development plan, the 91 development plan, which expired in 2021 or 2011. In 20 years, it was able to implement. Only 18% was implemented. And it kind of it changed 300 times. Small changes. The development control regulations which accompanied the plans were changed 400 times. Small correction. So where is the plan if it is changed 300 times and 400 times? What it speaks about is that cities require this kind of very agile ways of planning and making plans and plans. Agile plans which are dynamic, which change, which kind of change with the situation and with the whole dynamics of the city. I think modern planning is unable because Bombay particularly was settled. I told you 2000 years, but actively in 400 years, in the last 400 years, and planning feebly comes in only 100 years ago, and actually comes in around 50, 60 years ago. So the city is already there. The plan comes in much later. And the plan is therefore called development plan, because then you can only develop marginally here and there. You tweak it, you kind of change it and stuff like that. And planners have very basic considerations when they kind of think of the plan. They think of it in terms of population projection. What will be the population in the next 20 years, and therefore what is to be provided, and what will the population do in those 20 years? And conscious effort to kind of move the economy of the city also doesn't work, because you cannot kind of all cities would like to become rich, but it is not possible. It kind of it depends on the time, place, politics, adjacencies, and so many other things actually. So I do not believe in the idea of planning a city. But I do not say that plans should not be made. Plans should be made, because they are useful kind of tools to kind of evaluate and see where we are and what we do and stuff like that. It kind of but plans don't make cities. Cities happen by themselves. Cities kind of they happen through their own politics and dynamics, and when the economy changes, they happen differently. Like for example, the farmlands of Bombay started changing once the port came in, and suddenly you had a very dense city with which became a market, living space, institutional place, and all of those things coming together. So things happen in unusual ways actually. But the same port was not able to kind of make the city of New Bombay, for example. So
Yeah.
it is not even that those are not real criteria, not real conditions really to make cities. So they happen with their own logics, with their own kind of
So
uh,
what happens to the city? How, like, for Bombay, for Mumbai, Bombay, the logic has kind of changed over time. And now as a result, we see that we have a part of the city which is totally different. And there's so many different regions, and they've all just become very different identities in itself, like Sobo and Nobo. And then you have Thane, and then you have New Bombay. And, the social interaction from the people, from, let's say, the social interaction between someone from New Bombay and someone from Worli, say, Vashi versus Worli, and up to, like, the gelling, the way they react, the way they talk, all of that, it's just a very stark difference. Like, you can, for being a Mumbaikar, when you look at someone, you can automatically say where that person comes from. And the way they behave, the way they dress, the kind of lifestyle they have, all of that. So when this city just happens, and the city happens, and there's the planning, like we said, it just came up about a few years back. Before that, like, there was no planning. It just expanded. It just happened. Something happened here, something happened there. It just got built. As a result of these, the way the region develops, and as a reason of the way a city happens, there's also a way a person happens. A person that lives in that part of the city also happens along with the city. How is it that we find it okay to have, like, we as the city or as designers feel that it is all right for the city to happen, and that we can leave it to evolve by itself, when it is actually creating a huge difference in the social circles of the people living in the city? It affects the political situation, it affects the economical situation, it affects all of it, when it just grows by itself. Like, when we say we plan, and then the plan is not executed, like the plan was executed just about 18%, 20%, and the rest of it was allowed to just grow in itself. So that has a sort of an impact on the people that live in the city. And a lot of times, like in the city of Mumbai, there's a lot of negative impacts also that it has had. It's not always had positive impacts.
I would argue it. See, I told you cities are full of contradictions, right?
Yeah.
So Bombay was also full of contradictions, has been always. It's a it's a it's a uh, uh, fallacy to think that Bombay was a nice place, better than what it is today. You know, there's no evidence of that. Bombay was as fragmented, as polarized, as uh, you know, polluted, if not more, as uh, you know, complicated. It's in the last 400 years. It's not as if, as I mean there were there were neighborhoods which are inhabited by Kachis, by Hindu Brahmins, by lower castes, by Muslims, by Jains, by you know Bombay was separated. It was never this cosmopolitan, this idea of the cosmopolitan Bombay. It is not there. It's a fallacy. It is not as if the environment was much better earlier, because it was people spoke about the pollution of Bombay, and spoke about it since last so many years. And it's not as if uh, Bombay's polarization has increased. Bombay had very rich people and very poor people always. It is not as if things have kind of so things have not kind of become bad or something like that. They've become intense.
Yeah.
They've become intense. For example, the population of the city has not grown in the last 20 years. There's no It is much lesser than the national average or natural growth. You know what has happened is, but still the number of people moving by trains has increased 6% by six times 600%. Which means that the nature of work has changed. People need to travel much more. So what we feel the city of today is the nature of intensity. Is an intensity of the city. Of course, there is a climate change aspect to it, which is again, there are different opinions regarding it. But it is not as if things are very bad and things are moving towards becoming worse. It's not so. Things are kind of, has remained more or less similar, and also kind of, it has remained, it has improved, I would say. One. Secondly, I do not think that planning brings about social justice in the sense that what you're saying, that people will not get infrastructure, or there will be a resource division which is unequal, whatever. Planning is a act of power. you know plans are not made by poor citizens. Plans are made by the 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 powerful, the state in this matter. And the state is a political state, and the political state is depends on the rich a lot. Political state is made of political parties, and political parties require money, and that money comes from many entrepreneurs who are ready to pay money. And this is not new. Like Jamshedi Jija Boy, JJ, or Sir JJ, or the JJ College, the patron of JJ College, he was an opium trader. It was opium money which built that college. And why was he building college? Because he's not the state, he's not the government of Bombay at that moment. Why is he building? Because he was close to the government. The government wanted to get his money and build infrastructure, so that name remains. And we don't mind that an opium trader's money, which is kind of traded opium, has created the planning school of Bombay, or architecture school of Bombay. So I think the relationship between the rich, money, and planning and power is kind of fairly well established actually. It's not and people making their own kind of moves. When people make their own moves, there's a lot of they're it's not as if they are not powerful. They're small incremental power, but small incremental power gets balanced constantly. They watch, they make the first move, they watch their neighbor, and then they make the next move. In a slum, when a house is built, the house is built with a lot of negotiation. It is not built over at one stretch of time. It is built over many years. You wait, you watch, you kind of take the next step, you kind of pay a bribe, you find something breaking somewhere else, and you kind of bring the furniture from there, and fit something to your house. So the slum cannot be planned, because the process of making that building is not taught and cannot be taught, because it is so varied and different and complex. But it works because the slum bears the highest densities. In this COVID time, Dharavi was able to manage its COVID much better than Malabar.
Better than the rest. Yeah, I know that.
So
that's fascinating. And in fact, I have a guy from Egypt who's staying with me, and he was just talking to me, and I told him this, and he was surprised. For him, for the rest of the world, it's very difficult to understand and accept how Dharavi has become such an important part of Bombay, and how there are laws that say that you cannot break the slum. We have created these things where a builder cannot just enter and start using up that land for other stuff, for his benefits, and this has been the most surprising factor for anyone when you tell them that a slum actually managed to control the COVID situation better than a lot of other places in the city. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's unbelievable for them.
yeah. And it's for when I was growing up, Dharavi was a place to go to buy, pots and clay for the pots, leather things, and when I was growing up, it was not identified as a slum as such. It's another neighborhood, and it's an interesting uh, point because the idea of the slum is created by planning itself. Because where the planners cannot enter, you know, they call it slum. They call it kind of. I'm not saying there are no problems with Dharavi, or there are problems with infrastructure, congestion, uh, uh, ventilation, air movement, light, all of those things. But and nobody kind of opposes if better houses are built, but better houses are not built. What is being redeveloped is not better. In fact, Dharavi in its fabric, whenever a slum dwelling family kind of moves into the high-rise apartment, they break all the networks. And a social fabric which kind of is able to hold the pressures of the house and a family get disrupted. And there are studies which kind of speak about how domestic violence increases once families move from a slum to a high-rise apartment, because in a slum, if there is a crisis at home or stress at home, you get into the street and kind of the street absorbs the crisis. But in a high-rise apartment, there is nowhere to go. You are trapped inside your apartment and you just keep beaten up by your husband or your so I think there are many things to learn from the idea of the fabric of the city, which is kind of and again I'm saying nobody kind of opposes the idea of is romanticizing the idea of the slum or opposing people getting better houses, but the point is that the new houses which have been come for displaced people are 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 have taken away even what they have, and what they have is a good social security of their neighborhood, and that is kind of completely disrupted and stripped away from them.
So, when you look up urbanization and you start looking into what the urban, the word urban means, and what is exactly the definition of urban, and how, so there are these two things that come up. There's urbanism and there's urbanization. Would you like to shed a light on what urbanism is versus what urbanization is?
So urbanization is the process of becoming urban, and urbanism is study of uh, urbanism is actually not even a word. It's kind of a tricky word. Urbanism, we refer it to uh, you know the the uh, the a whole set of things which include studies, engagement, uh, processes uh, in an urban environment. So urbanism is kind of a whole set of things which come together to make to kind of put things together in a city. The various kinds of urbanisms that happen. It's a character of a place. Urbanism. What is the process of urbanization is a straightforward process in which a place can be started, can be called urban. And I think in India there are ways in which things have happened, like either through a development plan or a master plan or planning processes, or simply kind of intensification, or you change the economy by introducing an industry, or do something like that, and then the urbanization process begins. that produces an urbanism, and a series of things uh, that can be called urban and studied. Uh, uh, it's a term which is kind of nicely ambiguous. Uh, uh, what are you studying? You're studying urbanism. What does it mean? It means the characteristics of the city which makes it urban. And it's nicely urban, it's nicely ambiguous because it's, you know, I like ambiguities because then it provides for many things to happen. It is not clear, and it is not saying that this is urbanism and it is not. Well, this is also urbanism, and it is also urbanism. And a rickshaw driver can call himself or herself an urbanist. You know, yeah, because she thinks about the city, and therefore she's kind of. So I like the softness of the term urbanism and urbanist, and that's why I call myself an urbanist, because I like the softness, because I can say stories, I can kind of uh, uh, create artwork, and still be actively engaged with the city. uh, Urbanism is a broader umbrella which kind of holds all of my activities as an urbanist. So so I would kind of distinguish these two terms, in that fashion. One is the process of becoming a city, and one describes what a city is, urbanism. But also not only what is, but also the becoming, the whole umbrella of things that happen, take place in the urban.
So there's this development form called new urbanist development. Just enlighten me about it.
You mean new urbanists or new urbanists?
Urbanist development. I just came across it when I was doing some
So,
research work.
and the new, okay. So yeah. So yeah, this is kind of have you seen um, Truman Show? So Truman Show is a movie which came, I think, in the 90s. Jim Carrey and everybody, and it's a movie about this child who's kind of whose life is being telecast on TV, and that is a reality TV. The life is being telecast on TV, and a complete city is made as a set, and the child is going, and the child doesn't know that he's
He's
basically
being
an
filmed.
actor, for the TV commercial. So it's 24/7. There are cameras across the city which capture him, and then kind of the city is for him. Now that city is interesting because that city is a new urbanist city, because it is kind of it is planned with proper blocks and sidewalks and clear public spaces, and not very high rise building but low rise things. They're like sets. So I feel they're kind of uh, they infantilize life uh, uh, into a prescription of urban form, which is reduced to a set. So I think but their basis is that they provide an equality and efficiency to the city life. But then in the name of the efficiency and equality, you cannot do anything else. They're like these super planned places, which are walkable. They're the ideal. They're touted as that as the most ideal kind of uh, uh, places uh, in the to live in. But I feel that they're super controlled, and they're super kind of they infantilize the life to a so that you need only this kind of spatial control to kind of shape your life. So it's a It's a movement, I think, from the 70s in the US, which kind of which gained currency. I think people have spoken about it, written about it. A lot of people have kind of believed in it and do with it, and they produced cities which are which are planned for equity and efficiency.
Okay. So, when a city like this, when, for example, let's take the city of the Truman Show that you just described to me. The kind of visual that came to my head was, Chandigarh, like blocks and well planned, organized. What does it mean to live in a city like that versus to live in a city like Bombay? Like, Bombay is it's a network. When you look at the plan, when you open Google Maps and look at Bombay, you see these streets, these streets coming out from roads, and then they all converge to a circle. And then, if you're a bike rider in the city and you have a traffic jam, you can just take your bike onto a very narrow street that only pedestrians will be entering, and you will find a way to the other side where you want to get to 90% of the time. That is how I've ridden my bike around the city. And that's not something that can happen in a well planned city. That's not something that can happen in a city like Chandigarh. Like there are routes that are planned, and then you cannot just skip a route, or you cannot just hop a route and join another route and get to your home from that. So how does that kind of bring about a change in the lifestyle? Like if someone had to live in a city like this and that same person had to live in a city like that, what are the kind of differences he or she would face?
I think if you change cities, the initial time is always stressful. I mean, if I start living in a planned city, or a person from a planned city start living in Bombay, Bombay, parts of Bombay are also planned like that. Uh, so it will be stressful to kind of get adjusted and stuff like that. And but I think human beings, it's for them shifting is not a problem, and then they kind of adjust. The thing is that I think more than plan. I think, and as I say, it takes so much for a city to happen. That one is a built form, of course, which is the urban form, which is able to hold, and it has its dialectic relationship with the economy and culture of the city. You know? So if the economy, like Chandigarh is nothing but a government city. It is a government city, so it's full of government people, and they are and and it's very bureaucratic and all of those things. So it is useful for a city with that kind of a control and that kind of a you know uh, uh, ambition to control and stuff like that. Uh, Person moving from Chandigarh to here would find it difficult because uh, uh, well, one is the intensity hits, uh, but I think uh, as human beings, we are not like uh, you know. We're also like other species, which take some time to kind of acclimatize to a newer context, and to kind of sense, like it will take time to settle. That's what I'm saying, that it will take, like my example for this kind of thing is Gurgaon. Gurgaon is very interesting. From 50,000 people, it kind of it kind of uh, uh, it kind of uh, grew to 2 million people in the matter of 10 to 15 years. So it had people from Calcutta, from Bombay, from Chennai, from Ahmedabad, from Hyderabad, everybody kind of coming to Gurgaon. And it's an amazing city where strangers have come together to become friends and to become kind of to become uh, all kinds of you know uh, new processes and terms which have emerged when the idea of trust. What is trust when strangers come together? How is it built? How do you build the notion of enterprise? Where do because when the rich move, the poor also move, because without the poor the rich cannot live. And the poor need the rich because they give them money.
Yeah.
So but it's a city of strangers which has come together, and it has come together in very awkward ways but interesting ways. It is an interesting kind of place where without the government, without plan, without anything, the city has come together. It has happened, and today Gurgaon has the highest per capita GDP in India. So I think the stress remains. Like if I move to Chandigarh, I'll go mad for probably I'll kind of adjust a little bit later. Like when I went to Rotterdam to study, I went mad because I didn't know where was I, and every day looked like a holiday because nobody's there on the street. You know, and uh, and then kind of you get familiar, and then you kind of get acquainted with things. You get interested in the politics. You kind of make friends, and you kind of it takes time to kind of get used to it, and then you kind of you kind of start living it, and the city becomes yours, and you become the city. So I think cities have that time to acclimatize. There is that time. It's nothing which cannot be kind of lost. Like I mean, there are people who kind of like when my mother moved from one part of the city to another part of the city, she literally kind of shrunk because she couldn't just take the silence.
That's true. Okay, so I have this final question for you. When we talk about the city and the people living in the city, we already know, that space is an issue for our city. The space in the house, no matter however big a house you have, still feels smaller because you compare a big house in the city to a big house in, say, somewhere else. Our houses are smaller than most other city, right? So how does this affect our notion of privacy? Like when you look at the slum dwellers, they have absolutely no privacy. They have absolutely no space. You have these really, really tiny 50, square feet, 100 square feet rooms in which they live, and there are like 4 or 5 people living in that. We just discussed that, So how does privacy as a notion, it doesn't come to them, and it kind of falls out into the city. As a result, I'm not saying only the slum dwellers do it, of course, but that was just an example. But as a whole, the city as a whole sees a lot of nudity and a lot of, a lot of openness in terms of on a daily basis. How does this happen in our city? Our city is kind of one of the cities that is known for this stuff, How is it that this becomes a part of our city? Just there, it's just there, and anyone who chooses to move to the city has to accept.
I think. What other Indian language do you speak,
Hindi.
Nikita?
I speak Hindi.
You speak Hindi. So tell me the word for bedroom in Hindi.
I'm sure there will be a word. My Hindi is not that good.
Doesn't exist. It's a
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, there's a concocted term called Shayan Kaksh. Shayan Kaksh, but nobody uses the. So so uh, and bedroom is a sense of.
So Shayan Kaksh is a dictionary word for him for bedroom.
It's not there in our the.
Yes, it's not there.
Palaces did not have bedrooms. And the idea of the bedroom is comes only later on. So what I'm trying to say is that the idea of privacy has a political economy. It has a history. It's not a given idea. It has kind of it has settled over time, and it has settled over time for a variety of reasons. It has settled over time with the emergence of a nuclear family, with the emergence of exclusions, with the emergence of I mean, why on earth should kitchen be a separate room? Tell me.
Shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
I don't like the kitchen being a separate room. For me, it has to be a part.
But if you ask any woman, she will not like the kitchen to be a separate room.
Yes.
But men will like it. It's a consolidated idea, and men would say, for privacy, it smells, there are a lot of things that are happening, organizationally problem, all of those things, which is say all of it. I think the idea of privacy has to be seen through a series of cultural lenses, in which gender, class, history, many things kind of come together to kind of uh, 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 to kind of uh, reduce the idea of privacy. And for example, for example, I took a student to a tribal village, and in a tribal village, I mean, they had to kind of the bus stop, and then they had to walk some 6 kilometers, and they're inside, and they reached the first sight they saw is around the well, men and women bathing naked. Now they're shocked. They're shocked with this whole idea of men and women bathing naked. Now what is happening here? The question that I ask them is, not to ask that why are they bathing naked. The question to ask the student is, why is it that they are feeling shocked about it? Where did the idea of shame and privacy come into your mind? And how did the idea of shame and privacy come to your mind? No, so I think the you I mean the there are cultural variations in which uh, uh, people live by, and I think uh, the question really is that whether everybody should have their own room or no. Well, I shouldn't be unhappy, or you shouldn't be unhappy, or anybody should not be unhappy. If you ask anybody that you want your own room, everybody will say yes. The question is that you cannot do it at this moment, and what you have at this moment is an interesting form which is able to provide you many supports when you do not have food, when you need care, when you need security, when you need social safety, you need other things. This form is able to hold you. Of course, it is a problem in terms of privacy. Uh, Different genders feel it, different age groups feel it. Like the older people might like this kind of fuzzy private boundaries. Younger people might hate it. Women might hate might hate privacy loss. But I think the notion of privacy is kind of is manufactured one, like other notions of shame, family, etc., etc., etc. But nevertheless, I mean, we are in a situation where we are kind of we are living in this world, and we kind of work with these notions, and these notions help us to kind of make things feasible and sustainable. And I would kind of also say that privacy kind of depends on the ways in which people experience it, depending upon age and gender. Older people might like the publicness, younger people might want private spaces, uh, women might prefer private spaces, men might prefer public spaces, and all kinds of notions are there. uh, but
The Western culture, some of the Western countries, and
yeah.
they have this concept of nudity. They have nudity legalized. There are not a lot of countries there, but there are a few. And still, when we look at our country, like we just discussed that in our country it was very difficult. It's not something that privacy comes in our culture since forever. We are used to not having a lot of private spaces. We've been okay with that. We come from families, we come from large families, having 200 people in a family, 100 people in a family. and we're all very closely knit with that. It was lovely. It was lovely speaking to you, Prasad. It was lovely to know your thoughts, and we'll be seeing you soon on the 20th with Rupali and with Dr. Sandeep,
Yeah.
and we'll continue this conversation.
ठीक है, चलो, bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.